I'm absolutely loving this Himalayan 450, but there are a few things that still really frustrate me about this motorcycle.
Yeah, kickstand down there's a problem. Yeah.
For the sake of balance, we're going to talk about the 5 things that I don't like about the Himalayan as well, because it's not fair to just go on about how brilliant this bike is without giving it a balanced outlook so you've got a realistic expectation of the bike. And the first major issue is there's no hiding the fact that this is a little piggy. She's almost 200 kilos. Now that usually isn't a problem in second gear when you're moving along on the trail or you're going faster. You don't notice at all because this is such a great and well-balanced motorcycle. But in the tight stuff, when the trails start getting really tight and you start getting a single track behind me, you do feel that weight at those slow speeds. So there's this extra worry that you're going to drop it because it does feel its weight. So it's going to be heavy to pick back out of the mud, and it's going to be heavier than a dual sport to manhandle around the trails. Now, I still argue this is way easier to maneuver than a middleweight adventure bike in these situations, but don't kid yourself that this is going to be as good as a dual sport when it gets to these situations. This feels like a small adventure bike and it weighs as much as a small adventure bike. So be realistic about the weight. At almost 200 kilos, you are going to have to make some accommodations to the type of riding you're going to be doing. And it is a frustration because I would have loved to have seen it 10, 20 kilos lighter than what it is, but that would have mean the materials would have been higher spec, and that would mean higher costs, and that would price out a lot of people in being able to afford this bike, and that's one of the biggest winners of this machine. So I think realistically it is what it is. I can easily ride around it, but I just wanted to say, for the sake of being balanced, do not kid yourself that this is super lightweight. It feels 196 kilos when the going gets tough and it's really slow, and when you drop it.
Rightio, thing number 2 that I don't like, that it's hard to see when you're actually looking at the bike just in its silhouette, is all these bits that stick out make it really hard to grip with your boots and grip the bike well like you would on a dual sport and an enduro. This is a bit of a chonker, so it's hard to really get a comfortable position. You always feel like you're banging up against stuff and you can't quite get right. But that's to say, because I'm in MX boots, knee braces, or my enduro kit, it is going to feel a little bit uncomfortable and cumbersome compared to a skinnier bike where they really think of the form and how it will fit the boot, particularly MX boots. My adventure boots is fine, but the MX boots with all their armor, they really get caught up on everything on this bike. So I would have liked Royal Enfield to think more about the trim waistline and how the boot would grip the bike. But in saying that, it's an adventure bike, not an enduro. It's not really meant to be ridden super hard, so you can forgive them with that. But it is one thing that I would like to have seen, just for when I do feel a little more spirited. But it is what it is, but that is my second criticism.
It's the kickstand. It's too short, it's well known, but it also does get annoying.
Yeah, kickstand down there's a problem.
Even though it's not the end of the world. Now, the story goes, when they originally developed the 450, they were developing it with a 19-inch wheel, so the kickstand was sufficient for when that had the shorter wheel. Somewhere along that development, they had the very wise idea to put a 21-inch front wheel on instead, but they didn't extend the length of the kickstand. So what ends up happening is you've got a kickstand that's too short. So when you lean it over, this bike really does lean over quite a bit. But fortunately, there is a very easy fix to this. All you need is something like this. This is a foot extender. So as you can see, this particular one is from SRC Adventure Moto. And so not only does it give you the extra height, but this also gives you a wider pad out on the dirt. Because this bike is fairly porky, as I talked about earlier, I do have to pull my finger out and get onto this, but it's a very easy fix. But the kickstand is too short and it does get annoying. The other thing I genuinely don't like about the Himalayan, this might be a bit of a weird one to some, but when you're in the city, it's fantastic having that ability to have the navigation come up on the LCD screen on a Himalayan. But what really frustrates me is one, you need an app to do it. That's no strange thing. They all want their own apps. Rather than doing Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and it just automatically connects and it's all simple, they've all got to have proprietary software, which is frustrating in itself. It's a little first world problem, but it goes a bit deeper than that for me too. When you get the Royal Enfield app to connect it with your GPS on your phone so you can have it mirrored up on that LCD screen, they want full access to your phone. And I asked myself, why does Royal Enfield need that much information? Other than my skepticism that perhaps they're just trying to get as much metadata as they can, because that stuff is pretty much the most valuable commodity on the internet. So I'd like them to be a bit more upfront about that and allow the option to have as minimal interaction between your data and Royal Enfield's app as possible, and for it to still function nicely. So that would be nice for it just to have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, no silly apps, and it's just mirrored straight on your phone without any hassles, rather than that extra step and giving up all of your data to Royal Enfield. So that is a frustration. I'm sure you've noticed in the audio that there's an audible squeak coming from my bike about halfway through the ride. I did go through an awful lot of mud and water because it's very wet out there at the moment. But considering that this is still a bike that's made to go off-road, and to me, a squeak coming from the bike because of the conditions I was riding on is still fairly unacceptable. The squeak is very audible. I'm sure you can all hear it. And it's also very frustrating when you're riding it, hearing that squeak. Strongest inclination is that it's something to do with the rear suspension. You can see when I'm going at slow speeds over the undulations, it's still squeaking. And whenever I hit rougher terrain, the squeak does pop up to a greater extent. So that's where I think the problem could be residing. The other possibility is in the rotation of the wheel somewhere. Maybe there's something to do with the bearings, or it could be the front or rear disc brakes making that sound, although I'm less inclined to say so. This sound is not present when I'm on the road. You can't hear it at all. So that lends credence to this possibly being when the suspension does have to extend itself in off-road situations. One is it's really frustrating. I'm not going to deny that that sound really gets to me and annoys me, particularly when you've got to edit all day and listen to it all over again. So that is a major frustration. Two is I'm really hoping this will be sorted out pretty quickly, because a few days after you're seeing this video, the bike will be getting its first service. So hopefully the mechanics will know exactly where to look and will be able to come to some resolution, because it is quite annoying. But the good news is we found it early, I've noticed it, and we've got mechanics that can look at it, and I'll be able to share it with you guys. This definitely is the kind of frustration that if it doesn't get solved over the long term, it's like sandpaper to me, and it will gradually annoy me. So I will let you know how this saga goes, whether it gets resolved or not, because after all, this is why everyone's here. You guys want to see what owning a Royal Enfield is like. Is the quality there? Is it not? Probably the biggest frustration on this list. Or maybe I'm just being too picky and I should put up with a squeak, and we can call the bike Squeak from now on and just roll with it. Who knows? Sometimes I really do have a hard time trying to figure out whether I'm being too critical on something or whether I'm not being critical enough. So I'd love to know where you guys land. Would this squeak drive you crazy, or would you just call the bike Squeak, move on, and just accept it for what it is? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now, I don't want you to get the impression, if you've only seen this video from me, that it's all doom and gloom. Yes, these are some frustrations, but the overall ownership has been absolutely fantastic. I'm absolutely smitten with this bike, its capability, its versatility, and its looks as well. It's really grown on me to the point where I absolutely love just staring at this thing in the garage. It's a fantastic bike, but it's not a perfect bike. And that's it for today's video, guys. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, don't forget to stay shiny side up.